All right, beautiful people of the internet, a brand new episode, this time titled The Dark Side of Success. Because obviously we're sitting on a couch here in a beautiful hotel in Orlando, Florida, with two very successful people. And while there are endless podcasts on the success, today I want to go somewhere where maybe you haven't gone before. And so I'm going to start you off easy. Actually, easiest for those who may not know who you are. Let's just do the obvious thing first. Names, titles, but here's the twist. A book, a movie, or a song that has recently spoken to you.
You go. You start. When it's a hard question, you go first.
Okay, when it's easy one,
I'll
go
take
first
the
too,
easy
right? So I'll talk all the time. All right, so I'm Jan Gerber, founder and CEO of Paracelsus Recovery, which is a mental health clinic based in Switzerland. And what recently resonated very much with me was a book called The Four Agreements.
Okay.
But I won't take up time to just look it up. And
The Four Agreements.
It helped me
Nice.
a lot.
Super.
I hand out copies actually, but I know.
And Jeff?
Well, I've got to think about the third part of that. The first part I know. My name's Jeff Hoffman. That one I was ready for.
Good.
Currently the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. I am a longtime tech entrepreneur. Our companies were Priceline.com, Booking.com, Ubid.com. Let's see. That's kind of a hard question. You said...
No, this is the easy part.
Oh my, that was the easy question? You said a book?
A movie or a song that has recently spoken to you.
Wow. It might be a movie. So it wasn't, so I'm not going to go that deep. I'm going to answer the question, something that spoke to me. We saw the movie, The Creator. Mm-hmm. It's a movie about AI. And I literally, throughout the entire movie, was deep in thought because the whole world's talking about, is AI good, bad, both, either, etc. And that movie made me think really hard about what's next for humanity. So that one actually, usually I go to a movie just to be entertained. That one was actually deep thought.
Yeah. So let's maybe go to the start of your stories, which is of all the mentors, people who spoke into your life, people that role modeled, people that inspired, what is one thing you wish you had heard from them that you did not? So you go back and you look through some of the struggles, the challenges. What is something you wish they had told you about this journey?
I'll go. We'll just alternate who answers first to make it.
That's fair.
So that one is really clear for me. I wish somebody had told me to stop listening to the wrong people, right? And so, Dan, I wrote something down at this board where I always wrote down things that mean something to me. I finally summarized it one day. And this is what I wrote down. I wrote down that we get our advice from proximity, not relevance. But I wish someone had told me that because
That's good.
it was for me. It was life-changing because proximity, your husband, your wife, your mom, your father, your best friend, your spouse, all those people are the ones in your ear all the time telling you either you're not good enough, your idea makes no sense, you'll never make it. And the only qualification they have for giving you that advice is proximity. And one day I woke up and said, I need relevance. And I reached out, I looked out in the world and I said, who is somebody, I love you, Mom, but I'm not trying to be you. And I said, who is somebody I want to be like when I grow up? And by the way, that's what I tell everybody now. The way you find a mentor is not because you're in the media business and they're in the media business. Find someone you want to be like as a human being. I found that person. And when I reached out to him and listened to him, I was like, all the time I wasted listening to all those other people. I wish somebody had said, listen to relevance, quit listening to proximity. I wasted a lot of time doing that.
I have a question to follow on from that, but Jan, I'll give you a chance to share. What's a piece of advice you wish you had heard?
I guess for me, it's don't underestimate gut feel. I have a very strong intellect that always, talks in my head. And every time I pivoted, like intellect versus gut feel, and the intellect won, the gut feel was right. Gut feel, heart, whatever, energy, call it whatever. But, and obviously, kind of do your due diligence, think things through, structure it and all that, and then get some references. But in the end, if the gut feels still off, even though intellectually it all makes sense, stay away.
This episode is titled The Dark Side of Success. And so I want to press a little bit more personal on both of what you said. And so I guess starting with you, what's your criteria for knowing who's relevant and who you should have in proximity? But I'd love for you to share that from where you got it wrong. You don't have to name the person, but when did you get that wrong? When did you know you got it wrong? And what effect did it have on your career or your mental health?
So I don't have to name the person because it was everybody. I had these big dreams, right? I grew up in the middle of nowhere with no money or anything, but I was going to go see the world. And everybody I told that to laughed at me. They're like, dude, you're going nowhere. You need to go get a job. And so all the advice I got from everyone was, your crazy dreams of seeing the earth, flying around the world aren't going to happen, man. You're broke. Get a job. And so everybody said, go get a good job at a good company so you can get a good paycheck. So you asked, when did you know you got it wrong? When I was sitting in that cubicle day after day, staring out the window, not seeing any of the world, and wondering there's a whole planet out there that I was planning to see that I'm not going to see because I am broke and I need a job. But one day I said, this can't be it. I can't sit here the whole rest of my life, right, and never see the world because I need a job. And so sitting in that cubicle one day, looking out the window, thinking, this isn't right. I realized I got it wrong. I listened to everybody. I folded under the pressure. The second part of your question about finding a mentor to get it right was, everybody kept telling me, Jeff, there's no job that's going to pay you to fly around the world and see the world. And I kept thinking, okay, you're right, but I'll just make that job. What if I just created a company and travel, where literally I designed a job where my job was to travel around the world? Everybody laughed at me. And so when I found out I got it right, was I started saying, I need one person even to believe in me. So I started saying, looking around the community, who in the world is somebody I look up to that I want to be like one day? And I found a guy. His name was Roger. I looked this guy up and I was like, man, I want to be him someday. And that's what started me realizing, right, that I can't accept that I got it wrong. I can fix it. And so eventually I was able to reach out to him, and his reaction was the opposite of every bit of advice I got. He's like, right, you're going to have to build that company, but here's how you can build a company, and here's why you personally are well suited to it. And it was life-changing when I found someone who's relevant. The relevance was he was an entrepreneur that built things and created the future. Everybody else I knew were job seekers.
Yeah. A little side on that. Yeah, so you and I were at the Pitbull concert. We all were. And I love that moment when Pitbull, before the song, stopped to acknowledge someone that spoke life into him. I think it's the same thing here. You know, can you find the people that speak life into you? Because it just takes one person that can change your entire trajectory. So
yeah, he shares that because his sixth grade teacher was the only person his entire life that said, I see big things in you. I believe in you. Make good decisions. You can make something out of your life. And again, it's so cool that her name actually was Hope.
Yes, Miss
Hope.
Hope.
The teacher that gave him hope.
Yeah,
cool
that's
story.
right. Jan, you mentioned something that many would refer to as alignment, getting head, heart, soul together. My question to you is, when has your alignment been off? When did you notice it? And if it was too late, what did you do to recover from it?
Learning a hard lesson, basically, was the outcome in the end. I guess not being in alignment is, well, you don't know when it starts. It might start in your childhood, might go through your whole life, right? I guess the moment you realize it is like, okay, so I need to do something about this. But it can take a while because, denial, the comfort zone, or just like, also fear, like, how do I approach this? How do I part from a life partner, business partner, whatever it might be, is like, it's clearly something's off. And my gut feel tells me, there's a ticking time bomb. But actually everything is okay, or your intellect kind of sweet talks you. Is like, actually, yeah, today, he or she was actually okay, constructive, whatever. So let me just focus on how I can bring out that side more in that person. But so, from personal experience, so business partners I had from like smooth, constructive to toxic, like we're talking mental health toxic, right? I had the whole array of experiences. And thinking of the very toxic one is still, but there were so many things that the person said and kind of spoke to my, I don't know, ego, hopes, dreams, whatever. It's like some intellect always kind of caught on to that. It's actually, no, I cannot end this. It's kind of, it sounds too good. But in the end, gut feel was right. But luckily, I was aware enough to kind of see that red flag, feel that red flag. So I never went all the way, kind of in terms of trust and all that. So I was protected when things eventually fell out. Comes back to gut feel.
Both of you are phenomenal entrepreneurs. Both of you have started. Both of you have executed. Both of you have completed and restarted and executed and completed and restarted. I've always said that the best school of life is the startup world. I cannot think of anything else that you do that teaches you as much about yourself as entrepreneurship. That's also because I'm not a parent, so probably being a parent is a more school of life. But for me, this is it. And I have had great experiences and really bad experiences. And I think I felt the most acute betrayal as an entrepreneur, because I remember the day where four co-founders and one investor called us saying, do you know, we'll leave the name out, let's call him Roger. Do you know that Roger pitched an idea to us? I'm like, huh? Why is he pitching another idea while we're building this company?
One of your teammates.
One of the
Wow.
co-founders. And he said he pitched the same idea, but with a different name, to the same investor. And first I was just annoyed by his stupidity, right? If you're going to do that, at least go to a different investor in a different space, not the same investor. And second, what does he think? I've never felt so betrayed. And I remember having to deal with a lot of emotions before dealing with the actual situation and also trying to control the aftermath with investors, stakeholders, and everything else. I felt a lot as an entrepreneur. I would love if you would share a moment of pain, angst, confusion, frustration, hurt, betrayal, any emotion that you want. I'd love to know what happened, but also what did you do, healthy or not healthy, to medicate at that moment?
The easy questions, right? Very specifically, it's in my most important company at the time, and it was tough times, restructuring and all that. And the CEO, who was a friend before I hired the person, after, basically almost daily exchanges, and I always felt the pulse, like, how are you doing? It's overnight, basically pulled the plug with accusations. And I realized there's probably a mental health, component, and it's very human and all that. But I also realized only afterwards that there was months, if not a year, of kind of bad-mouthing me with relevant stakeholders, clients, business partners, and all that. So it took me a long time to repair that. And my reaction was like deep betrayal. And for a moment I was like, can I ever trust somebody again? Because literally a week before I was like, I know it's tough. Let's protect you as the CEO. Is like, because you bear a lot of responsibility. If this thing kind of goes bankrupt, I want you to be okay. So let me take that burden. And a week before pulling that plug, it was still like, yeah, I'm with you all the way. It doesn't matter where he goes. I'm in it. And a week later, got a letter with accusations and all that. But luckily, at that time, I knew enough about, through my work in mental health, I knew enough how to healthily and not healthily deal with, frustrations like that. So I was just like, forgiveness to, see the tragedy in it, but no evil. Don't take it personal. That's another thing. That's actually very good advice. Don't take ever anything personal. That's part in this, in this book of the 4 agreements I mentioned earlier. One of the agreements with yourself: don't take anything personal. Don't make assumptions. Always try your best. And that helped me so much. So it was tough. Company recovered. I took over again and got into better waters. And maybe it had to happen. Maybe I had to go back in myself. So everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
See the chance in adversity.
Jeff, take us through a moment of angst, frustration, heartbreak, betrayal, a dark moment. And how did you medicate?
Okay,
What was
so
your response?
as I mentioned before, the world was telling me to get a job, but more importantly, especially when you graduate college, you have to pick a major and pick a career, right? People are 21, 22 years old, and you're being told, what are you going to be the rest of your life? That's the pressure the world puts on you. And everybody said, become something that's employable. So software and tech. So I got a software engineering degree because writing code is always a job. Not because anyone said, do you like writing code? Is that fulfilling or passionate? They just said, you'll always have a job. So I got this degree. I know how to write code. And it wasn't a job. I started my first company. But my life was going to be built around writing code, right? Because that's the thing I knew how to do. So I hired some coders, and 3 of them. And we are sitting in the office one day. Everybody's just typing, and I notice no one's typing. And I look and I go, guys, what's going on? And they all look at Robert, who was this rock star developer I hired. And Robert goes, Jeff, do me a favor. He said, just back away from the keyboard for a moment. And I said, what's going on? And he said, you need to stop helping us. And I said, writing code? He said, yes, just stop. I said, okay, hang on. This is my tech company. He's like, true, and still you suck at it. And I said, okay, what degree do you have? They said, Jeff, we all have the same degree, but we're really good at this and you're not. And I just sat there frozen. I was like, you firing me from my own company? They're like, no, find something else to do. Actually, at the time, they said the product's going to be done soon and no one knows what marketing is. Go figure that out. But I went home that night and I was like, the thing I'm basing my entire future on, I was just told I suck at it. And that was hard, right? And I sat there and I was like, now what? What am I? Where am I going? What skill am I going to base my career on? It was devastating to go home and have people say, you're just not good at the thing you think you're going to do the rest of your life. Never saw that coming. Now, the medicate part was to throw myself into something. You can't just sit there and cry about it. And I will say, people ask me now as an entrepreneur, what is the secret for recovering from failure? And the secret is there is no secret. It sucks. Get over it. And I used to tell my team, because we failed more than once. It's Friday, we're shutting the company down. Saturday, you can cry the whole day because this hurts. Sunday, you can go drink or go out on the river, whatever it is you do, right? Whatever you want to do. But Monday morning, shake it off and come back because we're going to try something else. But at that time, no one told me that. And so I literally I went home and I was really depressed and I was like, I don't know what future I have. I don't know who I am. But the medication was, I can't just sit here and be sorry for myself. So I literally dug into something brand new, marketing, and that was new energy, new learning, and it just kind of revitalized me to be focused on something new.
You know, just quickly, my take on that, it's in a way, in hindsight, I see it as probably a gift that you built, albeit small, a corporate culture where people actually dare to say, you know, you're the boss, you pay our salaries, but you actually suck at this, because there is a whole world of startups and companies where people are actually afraid to do that. And the result is failing products, failing, companies. So
You said a huge thing, because culture is everything. One of the things I teach now, when people say, why do you think you guys were successful? It's because we had the best people. They say, how did you get the best people? Because we built a culture that everybody wanted to work in. So I 100% agree. Culture, by the way, culture helps you through those problems, because culture attracts the law of attraction. Culture attracts the people you want to be around, and those are the people that are there for you in those worst moments. Those are the people that say, it ain't the end of the world, we'll figure it out. If you don't have a tribe, sometimes it's super lonely. You can't get through that. At that time, I didn't have a tribe, and I went home by myself and figured it out. Since then, I've learned that if I build the right culture and attract the tribe, I have people that will pick me up when I'm down and vice versa.
Can we pick up on that word lonely? So there are a lot of expectations of leaders, of people at the top of whatever vertical or industry, and there are many consequences, byproducts that come with that. The one that I struggle the most with is loneliness. And I don't necessarily mean physical loneliness, more the expectation that I know the right answers, that I have the right strategy, that I have a plan, and I'm lonely in figuring that out. often because it's in a new space, it's in a new territory. So even if I had a tribe, they might resonate with elements of it, but I'm still on my own on this journey. I'm still there with the machete making a path where no one has done it before. I'm curious if loneliness has played a part in your life. What does that look like? And how did you deal with it?
Well, the other part of lonely, which I'm sure you can share, well, you mentioned it, but it's when you're the leader and everybody's dependent on you, right? And they're wondering, they're assuming they're getting paid next week because you're going to figure it out.
Right.
And that's a lonely. There's no one is going to figure it out but you. It's your company. You hire these people. You're responsible. So there's responsibility for people's lives has a huge loneliness factor. I'm sure that you experience that when you start hiring people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, I mean, for myself, one thing I've never had ever is a coach. So I always I was my own sparring partner, my own coach. I always figured things out on my own, which in some ways I can be proud of what came out of it. On the other hand, there was a lot of dark moments on the way. Because and if it fails, it's just me. Will it fail? Nobody pep talking me, anything like that. So kind of motivational talks on the internet help, or a good friend, kind of peer to peer, that works. But it can be very lonely when it's responsibility on your shoulders, and it's just your shoulders.
Yep, so. And any stakeholders, especially investors. Ooh, yeah. So my first company was building these kiosks that you go check yourself into the airport out. That was the first company. And I had a big plan, which was we'll get data from all the airlines so we can find your reservation. Except every single airline said no. All data is protected. You can't buy it. You can't touch it. You can't have it. So now I've got everybody staring at me. Now what? Everybody's saying. That's a lonely moment. Because I was like, okay, plan A didn't work. And everyone's like, you better have an idea. It's tough. It's hard.
Absolutely. When people are asking if they should be an entrepreneur or not, I usually recommend that they be an employee, because if you're an employee, you're accountable to one person, your boss. When you are a founder, you're accountable to everybody, your customers, your clients, your investors, your shareholders, your staff, everybody. I'm the last one to get paid. I'm the last one that feels safe. Everyone else is depending on me. So loneliness is an interesting feeling that I've had in my entrepreneurial journey. Another one that I think is not talked about so much is sacrifice. Now, I think what's talked a lot about is the effort, but I find that most entrepreneurs don't count that effort. It's just in our blood to do and to create. I have never sacrificed a weekend. I have willingly, voluntarily, maybe even obsessively used my weekends for work. That to me was not the sacrifice. The sacrifice was the unknown cost that caught up later. For example, personal health. I don't notice when I'm on a crazy schedule and I'm eating my way through the airport, through the plane, through the hotel, through the venue, and then 6 months later I look in the mirror and go, when did that happen? Or when I'm having a lonely moment and I go, I should call my friend. It's been 4 months since I spoke to them. How could it have been? What have you sacrificed? Something that is not time or something obvious, but maybe lesser talked about. What has been a sacrifice that you kind of look back and go, yeah, I did compromise on that?
I sold both of my children on the black market so I could work more. Does that count?
As a fake story? Hashtag fake story. Hashtag fake story.
Me.
Not for a second.
I was just kidding. I didn't sell them on the black market. I sold them legally. Okay, does that make you feel better?
In some countries,
still not okay.
Some countries,
still not okay.
Go ahead. That's a great question because there's a lot of sacrifice.
Well, personally, I guess in a way it's a gift and a curse. And I don't think I ever overboarded in terms of sacrifice. So I realized that I got feedback, you look really skinny and all that. Do you sleep enough? Do you eat enough? But I always felt like health-wise, okay, relationship-wise, there's opportunity cost, time you don't spend with your friends, with your family. But I always try to consciously kind of factor that in. I guess because there was, prior to my entrepreneurial life, I spent 3 odd years as a management consultant, where I basically was asked to sacrifice pretty much every waking minute. And I realized how that did not do me good. But I've seen, I'd say more in my peer group of entrepreneurs, but also with clients and patients in our clinic, some very successful entrepreneurs. The price that you pay for success, well, let's define success maybe for a second, right? Is the common notion is dollar.
That's the most common notion, right?
And in a way, that's a tangible. And then you can measure it by impact, for instance, but that's already less tangible, right? But in the end, everybody has to define it for themselves. But many people who have been financially, materially very successful, if you ask them, what's success for you, it's like, feeling connected with myself, having healthy relationships, friendships, raising healthy kids, and all that. And that often takes a back seat. And suddenly you don't realize, how did I end up here? It's like my kids are 10 years old, 15 years old. It's like they're not talking to me. They don't know me because I've been chatting around the world. And that's the reality of a lot of successful people.
So for me, there's a saying that, right, there's an old saying that says, nothing worth having comes easy. I think it's kind of true. When you worked really hard for something, it feels a lot better. If you were playing football and you were professional and you beat a high school team, so what? But if you played the best team in the world and you beat them, you had to work way harder, you had to prepare more. So sacrifice is the price of things worth having. That's okay. For me, though, the important lesson learned is that sacrifice has to have a goal and an end point. Because some people they wake up way too late and they found out they sacrificed family, relationships, everything for what? Right? And I was telling this story about sacrifice, and I was at a college, and I was telling them that I wanted this. I had multiple choices when I went to college. I had colleges that gave me universities that gave me a full ride scholarship, and they were known to be fun universities where I had a great time, lots of parties. But I had a more of a professional goal. So I picked a college that I could not afford. And when I got there, they said, you need to go home. And I said, I'm not going home. They said, you don't have enough money to go here. And I said, I'm going to go here anyway. And so I started a business in the basement, a software company, the basement of my university, because I wanted that degree from that university. So here's where a sacrifice came in. It would be Friday night, real story, and everybody would be like, dude, there's a great party, let's go. And I'd start to get up because everyone's going to the party, it's college. And I would say, you know what, guys, I made a commitment to finish this by this week. It's Friday night. Like, commitment to who? I said to myself, because I want this degree. And they would say, so you're not going to the party? I'd say, no, I'm not going to the party. And so I was telling the story at college because sacrifice with an end point. I'm doing this to finish something. There was an end point. I walked across stage in 4 years and got handed a degree that I funded entirely myself. I was done doing that. So it was funny because I'm in a university telling this story, and this one college kid said, Mr. Hoffman, he said, are you telling us then just never to party? And it was funny because before I answered about sacrificing for a goal, the kid next to him grabbed the microphone, pointed at me, and said to his friend, no, dude, the whole rest of that guy's life is the party. And I would never have said that, but he was kind of right. If you're sacrificing for a reason, I had a goal in mind. When you get to that goal, you just don't get everything for free. You're going to have to give up something sacrifices. I did not party in college like all my friends did, but I also got to my business goals way ahead of them, which left me blessed enough to live a life where I can go to parties all week if I want because I don't have to work anymore, in theory.
I did start the question with sacrifice, but I ended it with compromise.
Yeah.
Or you can reframe it as like sacrifice, or certain things that look like a sacrifice, call it investment.
Yeah,
No, but that's where I see the difference, though.
So there are things given up, and there are things that are not worth sacrificing.
I know, but
that's well said.
That's why, like I said, like not time, because I see that as investment. I don't see that as sacrifice. I see that as you willingly choosing to spend that time on something you care about. But compromise is something that catches up on you. Like I am not willingly eating my way through life. It just happens, it's just happening. And then I go, wait a second, I don't like this part of it. Or not being in touch with friends that I just thought, oh, okay, I'm close to them. And I'm like, actually, I've not invested in this.
And it didn't get you anything later. So it wasn't an investment, of your efforts, your time.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's where I see the difference in kind of like sacrifice and compromise.
Makes sense, yeah.
Sacrifice.
But in hindsight, it's easy. It's like time. You said we're not talking about time, but let's talk about time.
Yeah.
If you sacrifice partying, it's one thing. If you sacrifice time with your kids or significant others or your dying parent or whatever it might be, right? Some things will catch up with you later, but in hindsight, that's easy to distinguish. It's just when that is still in the future, it's not that easy to make sense of it. So it's good to have people who have been through that and maybe made the odd mistake and just share their story.
I have a question that I don't know if there's a clear answer. I wonder if this will turn into a debate. So it's open conversation. Why is there a high correlation between founders, CEOs, and mental health? Is it their fault? And I'm asking that intentionally in a divisive way. Or is it the industry? Is it the expectations of what it takes to get to the top?
So I'm going to say it's both, right? Because it's the expectation when you are a founder, you have all these pressures and stresses on you that the people with the 9-to-5 job don't. Right? That's the industry. That's the choice that you chose to be in this industry. But the reason I said it's also your fault is because in my case, I did nothing about it. I complained about it, made bad decisions, got unhealthy, and said I wrote it off, said, hey man, I'm a startup founder. That's just the life. Right?
Yeah,
startup
part
founders
of the deal.
work, our nutrition's bad, our sleeping's bad. So that's my fault. Instead of saying, I need to find a way to create more balance in my life and prioritize things like my health, not just the company, that is my fault. I did not do that well early on. But it was the reality of being a startup founder is what put all that pressure on me.
My reaction to that is, be kind on yourself and everybody else out there who thinks like this is my fault. Often you don't know better. In hindsight, yes, you do. But when you're in it and your peers kind of do the same thing, it's so fault is relative. I just like to add to that, and it's maybe more kind of academic, data-driven. But if you look at entrepreneurs, it takes certain personality traits to kind of even take that risk, a certain risk appetite or that. And there's actually research kind of at the intersection of psychology and economics, entrepreneurship. What are traits of an entrepreneur? And from a psychological viewpoint, there's a high degree of ADHD, for example, amongst entrepreneurs, because it comes with certain traits here, like you can't let go, you're constantly thinking and building and you're just impatient. But which other population has a very high incidence of ADHD is addiction. So, okay, you're a successful entrepreneur, you're more likely to have ADHD, but you're also more likely to self-medicate with substance and all that. And there already you go. You have kind of that mix.
So when I did an MBA, we at some point did the DNA of an entrepreneur. And I loved reading all these buzzwords, determination, perseverance, resilience. And those are all true.
Risk appetite, yeah.
Yes, but this episode is the dark side of entrepreneurship. And I think what's not talked about often is, not with data and facts, just conversation with friends. I feel that people who were insecure as children, who have a chip on their shoulder and a need to prove, are often driven by success, hoping that success will earn them friends and favor and platform. And that insecurity never goes away. Money doesn't make that disappear. Platform doesn't make them disappear. And so what I see often are people who have developed an external appearance of success, but internally they're still insecure. And so when we think about things like narcissism at the top or, being selfish or self-centered, often if I dig deep enough, it's actually an insecurity that is driving that, and they just got this cover. So yes, there are positive traits to entrepreneurship, but I think there are some dark traits to entrepreneurship too, like obsessiveness or insecurities. Is that just a personal thought, or this is where I say like personality has a part to do with it? I think sometimes it's their own personality.
100%. And look, entrepreneurship, it's such a broad term, right? It's okay, you build something and it has an economic kind of scale attached to that. It's like you want to for profit. But what are the underlying reasons why somebody becomes an entrepreneur? I mean, it's there's probably 9 billion reasons as there are people in the world. Everybody has a bit their own mix. So, and yes, some very successful entrepreneurs, they are driven by low self-esteem, by having always heard in their childhood, you're not good enough, da 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 da. And so it's like, I need to prove my worth somehow. And even once, parents are long dead and all that, that's still kind of their narrative. Amazing things can come out of that, like hugely successful companies, but still kind of a broken soul all behind that, which I find very, very tragic. And then there can be people who just like, I just want to build something, it's because in the end, entrepreneurship is creativity, right? And it's not so much the financial success or, what it exudes, the status and all that, but it's just building stuff. So that's on the other side. And then it can be all sorts of mixes in between. And I think there's no right or wrong, because successful entrepreneurs, they touch a lot of people, customers, employees who sustain their families with salaries and all of that. But what I would like to see is that successful entrepreneurs who still feel that void, who still struggle, who don't feel fulfilled, if they hear this, if you hear this, if you feel spoken to, it's never too late to acknowledge that and kind of, do work on yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll tell you the one that I see to add to what you guys are talking about, which is narcissism, is a big one. I meet people that the good and the bad is they think they're smarter than everybody. They think their way is the only way. They think their way is the right way. They think that everyone that came before them just didn't get it. And sometimes, thank God they thought that way because they actually created a new way of doing things. But there's a lot of them that create a lot of wreckage along the way because of that narcissism. I'm smarter than everyone. I know everything. No one else does. I was part of a company once that after we went public, the public board fired one of the founders immediately because he just thought he was smarter than everybody. But the irony of that was they thought his behavior was damaging to people that work for us because you're talking down to people and crushing them and telling them your idea is stupid. I'm the smartest person here. On the other hand, if he didn't believe that, we never would have started the company. So it's a little double-edged sword, but I think you are right. There are some dark traits in some of these entrepreneurs that have a double-edged sword.
And maybe it's worth to add a lot of these dark traits in a way can be dormant, and success can bring them out.
Can unlock that, yeah.
Big time.
And about the industry too, I mean, reality is we're not taught the word enough. So when you're successful, the expectation is to be more successful. And when you have won, the expectation is to keep winning, right? So it's not enough to get 1 Grammy because 2 is better than 1 and 3 is better than 2. And it just goes on and on and on. And so I think part of it also is industry. Coming back to what you said earlier, the expectations not just of your staff and your stakeholders, but I think just the expectation that you just have to keep outdoing yourself. If you're at the top, initially it's outdoing everybody else, but then you just try to keep competing with yourself and competing with yourself until the sad day that you realize you can't. And I think that's when trouble begins.
And also there's always somebody more wealthy than you, more successful than you, more popular than you. It's a comparison, but it's somehow it's in our DNA. It's a human trait. Maybe it has to do with, Darwinism, whatever. But and also economies always have to grow. Next year has to be better. Our kids need to be better off than we were. I need to have more money in my bank account than I had last year. And it's just never enough. I think it's, again, neuroscience, dopamine system, all of that. So in a way, we are hardwired to that. And it takes a conscious effort to transcend that. But if you're successful as an entrepreneur, I mean, successful in a way, built a company, it's for profit, it's profitable, all that. You reach a level where you have to ask yourself, so what does more look like? Is it just more money, more turnover, more status? Or is there more other things to that? And it can go 2 ways.
Yeah.
People find a purpose, they reinvest, they give back, and others just never stop the rat race. But who is the happier of the two, at their deathbed?
True.
So I'll also add that I'm the chairman of a nonprofit that's in 200 countries. So we have a very broad worldview because we go to all these countries.
Right.
And so I will say that phenomenon is particularly Western, meaning that in some parts of the world, I'll give you a prime example of non-Western behavior, certainly non-American. I found a young startup with some young entrepreneurs in Ghana, in a village in Ghana. I love their work and I love the guys. I took them with me to a competition that I was judging, a global pitch competition. I took them with me from Ghana to Rio, Brazil. They were not entered, but since I was the judge, I said, I'm just asking them just for the experience of pitching. There were 50 companies already. They won. And they weren't even supposed to be pitching it. Because they won, we'd invited investors from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley investors in the audience said, Jeff, who are these guys? I said, I found them literally weeks ago in Ghana. They're like, can we fund it? I said, you sure can. These guys from Ghana wound up moving to Silicon Valley, building their startup, massively successful, and they sold it. My expectation was everything you guys just said. You can do it again, you can do more, next one will be bigger. You know what they did? They both turned to me and said, we're going home to Africa to use the money we just made to help all these other people in our home country. And I was like, that is so not the American way, right? And that's what they did. So the cultural influences are very different. So what we're talking about is very true, but the good news is it isn't true everywhere. It's true in a media-influenced Western culture where all the media shows us is that everybody is doing better than you and you better catch up. Yeah. That's not the way they behave every part of the world, thank God.
That is true. Final question. In the positions that you are today, what have you built? What have you invested in? What do you enjoy that you would love to share as a habit to those who are starting their journey? So as a quick example, as you think about this, I love family time. I love the time with parents. I love the time with my sister. We do 1 to 2 epic, and I don't mean normal casual hangouts, epic times together. We create new memories every time we hang out, and that's something that we invest in. And every week we chat on Zoom. This is my grounding. Regardless of what's happened in the world, good or bad, this is home, and I invest in that. And that's one of the things I think people compromise on is family, and that's one thing absolutely I don't. And now that I'm traveling a lot more, I do about 257 days a year in hotels. One thing I'm adding this year that I'm hoping to build as a habit is to sleep in my own bed at least once a week.
So you're just bringing your bed with you on the road?
I bring it everywhere, on my private jet, So, yeah, what is something that you enjoy now that in hindsight you go, that is a habit worth building? That leaves me in a better place.
Well, everybody has to figure that out for themselves. So me as an introvert, the me time is what really suffered. And then when you have a kid who is very demanding, and then relationship, and you still have friends who are like, we haven't seen each other for 6 months. Where are you? Let's meet up. So me time is really what. And then when I had me time, I was like, okay, my to-do list is so long, and I think that's actually, well, you tell me what you think about that, But I feel that's kind of entrepreneur's disease. In my mind, I was always like, okay, so this and this I should still do, and somewhere like almost a superstition. If I just now like take the rest of the day off, something will crash and burn, And I worked, and I actually a good friend of mine and also a business partner. I remember a few years ago we were sitting over lunch during a work day. We're like, actually it's a beautiful day. We're sitting outside. We could have a glass of rosé now, and we're like, but. It's 45 minutes since we're out of the office. We both feel the urge of going back, but there was nothing there, no meetings, no. But I think it's a consciously, kind of step back for a moment. So like where I'm at is like, do I constantly have to, have this chatter in my mind? So that's something I found is like just conscious me time. Don't feel guilty about just saying, okay, you know what? Right now I feel I've done enough for today. I do whatever kind of feeds my soul, and often that's playing music or listen to music or going to the sauna, whatever it might be.
That's a great word. Thank you.
Wait, sauna is a great word?
That's a church term for like that could preach. That's a sermon by itself. Yeah, that's
why I said everybody has to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, without a doubt, and I completely agree with you that you guys already covered family time, right, and me time. It took me a long time in life to get to now, when as a business trip, tacking on personal time and something fun to create a memory, right? That family time. Let's go on an adventure. And so everything isn't just business all the time. But I have the same disease as you, that for most of my life, If I went to the beach, I would sit there thinking, I felt like I was actually committing a crime by taking a day off. Even though I'd worked a million hours and the company is killing it, I actually feel like I'm committing a crime. I have fought that part my whole life. But since you guys covered me time and family, you asked what's one of those things you want to make a habit. For me, I believe that the quality of your life is 100% dependent on the quality of the people in it. So discovering and meeting people is the habit. So I have this habit that literally asking everybody everywhere to tell me their story, including if I am standing in line, there's almost zero chance that I'm not interrogating strangers. And what I mean by, I talk to strangers all the time, and I'm engaging with them and asking their story. So it's become a habit. Whenever I'm standing near somebody, I was like, and does everybody receive that well? No, of course. But I've made some of the most amazing relationships that added dimension to my life by literally just engaging a stranger somewhere. So you asked for a habit, that's mine. Mine is talk to people, engage the person next to you, ask them their story.
I love that. Jeff and Jan, thank you so much for joining for an episode on the dark side of success. Wish you the very best in all that you do, and I love that you both play a role in actively investing in others, helping the next generation of entrepreneurs, thinkers, and innovators in their journeys, especially around mental health and well-being. And to our online audience, thank you so much for watching.
And likewise, Dan. Thank you.